Alrighty.
What's up?
So,
Yeah,
welcome.
thanks.
Maybe if we start off with just kind of, if you briefly touch upon who you are and your background. So,
Sure. Well, my name is it's Ernest Takashi Norris. I was
Ernest, does that come from Hemingway?
yeah, that's kind of my lost long
Ah.
uncle. No, it's actually my uncle's real first name that was given to me by my dad. But yeah, I grew up in New York City
Yeah.
in the '70s.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just on the Ernest, is there a particular reason why you use Takashi as the first name when dealing?
Well, it's actually my middle name,
Okay.
but yeah, why do I use it more frequently? That's actually I never thought of that. It's just one of those things that when I was young, people, my relatives would call me Takashi. They'd be like Takashi, or my buddies just started calling me Tak for short. It just stuck. It's like I guess anybody who's got names, they either have a nickname or they're called by their middle names more than their first name. But no reason. There's no rhyme or reason for that.
Hmm.
It just kind of happened.
Your parents ever told you why they started with first Ernest and then Takashi?
No, they just they gave the reason of the naming was that Ernest was from my uncle, who my father respected highly.
Hmm.
He did very well for himself as a gentleman growing up in the States. Actually, an African American growing up in Virginia, for that matter. He ran his own gas station. He had his own business. His wife was my aunt, who was my dad's sister. So by blood, Ernest, his last name was Gaines. Ernest Gaines, my uncle, was my uncle, but not by blood. His wife was my aunt by blood. But anyway, long story short, they didn't have any kids, but they died with he died with about a couple $1 million sitting in his account, which he gave to all his relatives, which no one knew about. So he did quite okay for himself,
It's a discreet gentleman.
right? Very discreet,
Keeping the secrets to yourself,
right? It's like it was
letting
like
people discover that
whoa,
later on. It's like,
yeah,
oh.
like oh shit,
So,
yeah,
because when you have a name like Ernest Gaines,
yeah.
maybe that was, you could read between the lines, like either you're a personal trainer or you're an investor. Because you
Yeah,
got Ernest
you
Gaines.
gaining, brother. Yeah, that's right. And Takashi
Nice.
came from my mom's side. My mom's father, my grandfather, his name was Takashi, Endo Takashi. So they named me after my mom's father. And Norris, God knows where. I mean, apparently, supposedly, if we go back, and that's something actually my dad and my relatives are doing is going back through our history because we're kind of mixed. There's a lot of mixed races in our family, and supposedly the Norris originated from Scotland. And there is
Mm.
some rumor in our family that a Scottish kind of person or ancestry had come over, and there were some slaves involved as well, and and also some American Indians. So actually, I'm kind of made up of African American, Scottish, American Indian, and then I've got my Japanese side. So fairly
Yeah, who
mixed.
knows even if that Norris from Scotland has got some sort of connection with the Gracies that came from Scotland as
That's
well.
right. I did. I know, right? When I saw that, I was like, "Ooh, there could be," because I do feel this bond when I see Henzo. Or I actually never met Hickson. I wish I had, but yeah, I have a couple of good buddies of mine who actually trained with Hickson. Yeah, but yeah, Henzo's a good guy. I met him. Really, really nice guy. But anyway, sorry, we're digressing a little bit.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No,
yeah,
no, no. I mean, it's a good because the yeah, let's go through the your story and then we can touch
sure.
upon all the Gracie related stuff.
Mhm. So yeah, so my dad met my mother in Tokyo. My father is he has a background in the medical profession. He was a doctor. Um, he went to the Vietnam War as a surgeon, as a medic.
Mm.
So he was there firsthand. He met my mother in 1964. he was in a some sort of they had some sort of medical convention in Tokyo, and he attended that. And when he went there, he went to buy some pearls for his sister. And my mom was working at the pearl shop there, and he said he was smitten with her. She was what, maybe 19. He was like 30 something, 31, 32, robbing the cradle. But anyway, he was smitten with her. He asked her out. I think they hung out. She said that she met him. She just wanted to study English. So she was just, practicing her English.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Women always give the politically correct
Exactly,
answer.
don't they? That's right.
Like, no,
Yeah.
I wasn't interested in the guy who was more mature. He was a surgeon. He got a
Yeah.
bit of money, status, clout, confidence. No, no, no.
Yeah.
I just want to learn a little bit of English.
There you go. There
But
you
all right,
go.
we get
Yeah.
it. We
Yeah,
get
we
it.
get it. And so they kind of kept in touch. My mom, who's actually a little bit of an adventure herself.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Did your mom actually speak English or what
Yeah, she
language
did.
did they use?
No English, because when she was 17, she went on a 1 year exchange to America,
Ah, okay.
1962.
I'm just thinking, back in the day, somebody who's working in a pearl shop, it's not obvious that in Tokyo they would speak English, right?
No, but then again, it was a famous one in the city center of Tokyo where they catered to foreigners. I think she was
All
kind
right, so
of
it was more like a high end,
high end. Yeah,
where obviously if you just work there, you need to have a bit more than.
correct.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
and she was very fond of foreign languages. My mom now speaks Spanish, Italian, French, Japanese, and English.
Okay.
Over the years, she picked all that up. But she studied in America, and then even after she met my dad, she went, I think, a year later on an cruise, or she went on a 3 month tour to Spain as an au pair by herself,
Okay.
and so she did that. And then somewhere it got a little fuzzy, but all I remember or what I heard was that my dad wanted her to come to the States. He sent her a ticket to come see him, which she did. I think she was like 2021, and then they got married. And then I was born like March of 1968. A lot of things happened in 1968, but yeah. So that was, Vietnam War was still going on. Martin Luther King, was he shot? I should know the date, but yeah, a lot of events happened during the 60s. And then I was born. I was taken to Tokyo for a few months to be with my relatives there. And then I came back to the States. And my mom, initially, we were in Michigan, where my dad was working at the University of Michigan. But my mom was like giving my dad an ultimatum, like she wants to be in a big city, so either California or New York. So we kind of moved to New York, and that's where I kind of grew up. Said that I was actually born in New York City Hospital, and I don't know why I was born there, but in any case, I was born there. But then we moved temporarily to Michigan, but then eventually we went to New York, where I grew up. I did all my schooling in New York.
So was
Yeah,
there a particular reason why your mom didn't like it in Michigan?
yeah. She's not a small town girl. Or not. I mean, it's not. It's a big town, but she wanted to be in the city. She wanted to be like in the city, like living
So
in a
that
big city.
Michigan, are we talking? They were not
Ann
in like.
Arbor. It's Ann Arbor.
It's not too far from Detroit, is it?
It's not, no, but it's still, it's not a big city.
Sure.
Yeah, and maybe she had a dream, which a lot of people do, of New York City or California, maybe back in the day.
Could it be that if she was kind of born and raised in Tokyo,
Yeah,
that there's a certain mindset that you want to be in a bustling metropolis?
most likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So grew up in New York. I went to school there. I went to a school called Dalton. It's a private school, and the only reason I went there was because my aunt taught there, and she recommended it to my dad. It was kind of progressive school. It's kind of like Montessori, where
Mm.
where you go. And back in the day, when you go to private school, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like, oh God, it's not all the hullabaloo that you have now. It was more that the education was good. It was very progressive, and yeah, I mean, I grew up with some really good friends there. Some of them went on to do some interesting things. Some of them became like actors. Some of them became directors, screenwriters. others in business, running businesses. One of my really close friends started a summer camp for kids that grew into a big business. And another friend of mine is an ESG. He runs a huge, kind of, what do you call it? Organization for environmentally friendly kind of businesses, investments, and all these guys I kind of grew up with since I was like, kid 7.
Mm.
So I kind of like know them like they're my brothers or sisters. So yeah, so growing up in New York, but one of the things I had, I think, was lucky was my parents wanted to make sure that I was kind of bilingual, bicultural, so they'd send me to Japan every summer. So from an early age, every summer, in the States, you'd have like 2-3 months off school, and then you could go to, people go to camp, right? That's kind of predominantly what people do in the
Yeah.
States. But I went to Tokyo. It sounds pretty like awesome, but for me, it was just like I'm gonna go see my relatives. It wasn't a big deal. So I used to fly like Pan Am when it's now defunct. It doesn't exist, but the Pan Am Airlines. I mean, you weren't born then, so
But so basically, you've been bilingual in Japanese and English like your whole life.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I can go back and forth. こうやって日本語で話すと全然問題ない。これを日本語にすれば私はもう普通に話すことができる。日本人としては。多分言ってること全然わかんないでしょ。そうだよね。
Yeah.
そうそうそう。
Calm down.
So yeah, so that was that. I was a very energetic kid, had a lot of energy. As I mentioned before, I most likely had ADHD. Couldn't sit still. I was in trouble in class sometimes. So my mom felt that I needed some focus, a direction, or an outlet. So I started Taekwondo when I was like 9, 10 or something. That was my first kind of foray into martial arts.
Should that not be considered as heresy if you have got a half your bloodline from Japan?
I know, right?
And Taekwondo
Right?
it's like Korean. It's like, bro, what are you doing?
You're actually the first person to ever brought that up, and now you say it, put it like that. You're absolutely right.
It's like judo, karate.
Right?
You've got jujitsu. Like, what the hell are you doing?
I know, right? What
Going to a different foreign.
What the hell?
sport.
What was my mom thinking? Maybe she had like she had an ex-China Korean boyfriend or something. I don't know. I don't know, but the guy who was running, his name was Richard Chun. I never forget. Good guy, but yeah, maybe they didn't have judo or Japanese back then, but they had that nice Korean Taekwondo studio about a couple blocks from my apartment. So I started there, and yeah, it was good. So Taekwondo is one of my outlets. In high school, I did.
How long did you do Taekwondo?
It's about 7 years, 6, 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was funny when I listened to Joe Rogan. If I had gone into, I didn't do any tournaments per se because I was more involved in my school wrestling and also football. So I didn't. But I'm listening to Joe. He and I were about the same age, so I probably would have gone up against Joe, which would have been funny. Joe Rogan, who did Taekwondo for many years.
Oh, funny enough, if you say Hana dul set net
That's-
dasot
yes.
yasot ilgov yudel ahob yol.
Yeah. I don't know, dude. Yeah, I know that. I used to actually teach class, and I'd have to say
Yeah,
that. Yeah. So what else is there interesting? I don't know. So I just grew up there, New York.
Is it possible? I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
Sure.
Instead of having an ADHD, you were just a healthy kid, a healthy guy with a normal or above normal T level. And nowadays they just overdiagnose everything. Say, oh, there's probably a problem like ADHD. He can't sit still in class, right?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there could be.
And the outlet part of it, that's the smart part from your parents.
Yeah.
I had the same thing.
Yeah, there could be, but I still find myself doing shit that because I did some reading about ADHD, and I would say about 7 out of the 10 kind of markers fit me in a way, even to this day. So I need an outlet. I need something to calm me down.
Sure.
Ergo, martial arts, yoga, things of that sort. So yeah, there could be, maybe the level is not extreme, but there's something that I'm not like baseline normal. Probably there's something different.
I'm to make you feel better. Nobody is.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
there is no like you're completely normal and healthy, and then you're psychologically damaged or you have a mental disease.
Yeah.
We're all kind of on a sliding scale.
Right.
And some people are good at hiding it, so they never get diagnosed.
Right.
And some people are all over the place, but that's just temporary.
Yeah.
And then they get overdiagnosed.
Yeah.
So we're all on the scale, and it's always sliding a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. At least I'm not stupid, though. I know that. There's a lot of like stupid people out there.
It's like it's pretty brutal to say, but if you're stupid, you can't do nothing about it.
No.
Your IQ is like your shoe size or your height. You can't help it.
No.
It's the same thing as you love basketball, but you're like 5 foot tall. It's like, good luck.
Ain't gonna happen. I know.
I mean, you have these surgeries that you can kind of break the bones, and then you extend them.
I know.
And then, but the recovery is like what, 2 years, and then you get like an inch, maybe inch and a half.
I've heard a lot more, but yeah, could be an inch. Could
Yeah, probably salespeople say always double.
3, 4. Yeah, that's true. Right.
But then the problem is, even if you do that and go through that pain, you got kids. It's not like they're going to inherit the taller version of you.
Right.
So it's, you remember the story in China? This is somewhat related. There was this businessman, apparently quite wealthy.
Yeah.
And he met this woman that was very attractive, and he was smitten, and they started dating. They got married, and they had kids.
Right.
And then when they had kids, the husband was like, "Damn, these kids are ugly."
Oh yeah.
And he was like, "How is this possible?"
Right.
Like he looked at himself and then looked at the wife. Was like, "It's not possible. The kids are this ugly." Like,
cosmetic surgery, right?
Yeah, she had been through a bunch of cosmetic surgery.
Right. Genetically, she was fugly.
Exactly.
Right.
And then when he discovered that, he got a divorce.
Yeah.
And she got nothing. He also got custody of kids.
That's fucked up.
So
I tell you,
you know, the Chinese courts are not very very progressive or not very woke.
No, definitely not.
But
I just saw on YouTube this dude is a kind of a English guy who just plays the piano. You saw that one? Yeah.
Well, Kavanaugh.
Yeah. And there's some Chinese tourist is like, "You can't film us. Stop filming us." And he's like, "Well, this is a fucking free country, and we're not communists like you are." But yeah, so getting back to my childhood, so I grew up doing that, and I did some sports in school, I had a pretty decent life growing up. I didn't have any siblings, so I didn't know what it's like to have a brother or sister. So maybe I'm a little selfish at times because I kind of just do things my own way because that's how I grew up, being myself. But I had a lot of good close friends, I would say, have to say, and part of my identity, people ask me, "What are you? What do you consider yourself?" And it's something. It's amazing how much influence your parents or people, have on you growing up as a child, and they kind of instilled in me this kind of notion that you don't need to label yourself. You are who you are. Just say you're Takashi. That's who you are. It doesn't. You don't need to be like, okay, I'm black or I'm Japanese or I'm Scottish or American. That's not the point. The point is you're Takashi and you are who you are. You're an individual, and be who you are. And kind of always resonated with me. So I'm very comfortable in my skin. I'm comfortable with who I am, and I just feel it at peace with myself. And so that's kind of how I grew up. And what else?
I mean, on that point, basically, where you're born, what genes you have, who your parents are, all of that. You don't get to choose it, right?
Right.
It's just a given.
Right.
So having too strong of an attachment to that is not necessarily healthy. Like, because you get older, you come of age, you become an adult, you're like, okay, there's a bunch of things I didn't choose for myself.
Right.
It was just handed over to me. It's like, okay, that's your box of chocolate, figure it out.
Right.
But then you get to build yourself when you become older. And then that should be your identity, right?
Sure.
What you build yourself with the toolkit that we were provided, plus time and effort.
But it helps to have a good foundation. Because if you build yourself on a shaky foundation.
So if you pick the wrong parents, I mean, it's on you, right?
Exactly.
Damn.
Which I've noticed, unfortunately, I've been around people who've had some traumatic experiences as kids, and it shows, later on. It's tough. But, I think, I don't want to get too philosophical or too deep here, but
go for it.
Oh, shit.
Go for it, man.
You have any weed? No, I'm kidding.
Okay, a couple of doses of psilocybin, please. Come on, bring it.
Right. Bring it over here. Yeah. No, I mean, we look at us. I mean, look at our body. I mean, you think about it. We're fucking just made of energy. It's like people are so caught up with the facade or how things look like and how they should be, but in the end, we're just balls of energy, and it's like get a life. It's people. I don't know. I feel like we are this. There is something else besides there. Do you call it a soul? Do you call it a spirit? What is it that drives us? That drives us forward? But ultimately, it's just energy. And then you talk about. I mean, because if you break us down into minute quantities, that's all we are. We're particles vibrating at a different rate. That's a particle. Everything is made up of particles. It just vibrates at a different rate, and that vibration is what. That's why when you feel things, it's your vibration that feels things that are off or on, or feels good, feels positive. It's people even say it like good vibration or good things. I mean,
People, you mean women, generally. It's like they're. I mean,
Yeah.
you might say there's a five senses that we recognize, and then there's a sixth sense.
Mm-hmm.
That you get a vibe, you get a sense of something's either on or off.
Correct.
Just like you start vibing with somebody.
Correct.
I don't necessarily like the word vibing.
Okay.
But you just find that connection.
Yeah. You could say you have a good what do you call it? Not chemical. Yeah. Is there a word chemical? Shit. What's the one that my mom used? Okay. Keep going. It'll come up. Yeah.
You mean the probably thinking about the same word. Like if you have got two people.
Yeah.
And they are drawn to each other physically.
Yes.
So then there's this pheromones, right?
Pheromones, yeah. There's pheromones as well involved.
Is it something else? Because pheromones is like if you, for example, work out with somebody, and especially I'm talking kind of more in the romantic sense of it.
Yeah.
And you sweat with them, and you smell their natural sweat. If the pheromones are compatible,
you're
probably drawn to them.
Oh hell yeah!
And then even though on paper you might think somebody is a great match for you, but then when you're close to them, like on the skin contact, you're like, not feeling it.
Happened.
So the pheromones are not there, and there is a
chemically compatible.
There is a theory saying that the pheromones in and of itself, it's like kind of a guideline.
Yeah.
Like if you go against it, there might be repercussions in terms of you might have dysfunctional kids or like you got all kinds of issues like Down syndrome, and if those are compatible to pheromones, it kind of pulls you towards that person, which probably is going to indicate sex is better, your genetics are matching. So having offspring is likely to have less, let's say, genetic defects.
Correct.
So, totally. And this is something, I mean, it's always been there, but it's only through probably awareness, scientific discovery, that we actually understand that, oh, well, by the way, there's a reason behind it.
Yeah.
It's not just something of like energy and vibes. There's actually an explanation.
A chemical, scientific, explanation. Yeah, no, you're right. There's a scientific component, but there's also, and maybe the energy part allows us to kind of, it's kind of that kicker that draws people together too. Who knows? Maybe it works hand in hand in some way, but I definitely see the pheromone part, because I many a times I've been with women and I'm close to one and I get super excited, and then some others are just nothing. It doesn't do anything to me. And she's really hot. She's really hot. I really like her. And when I come next to her, I don't feel anything. It's like weird. It's like almost, so I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody has a certain level of experience with that. Now, when you said about the vibes and energy, that's the reason I said a lot of women use that, because they need to be more attuned with it, for the very simple reason of they don't really have the alternative of resorting to violence. Let's say a dude is a little bit off and they don't feel the vibe or energy at the same level as a woman.
Yeah.
There's a problem. He can say, okay, I'll defend myself.
Yeah.
If a woman gets into a precarious situation where her radar, her vibes is off, she might be alone with a dude that actually has got bad intentions. She might actually be traumatized for the rest of her life. If her let's say, social calibration of reading the person is off. So that's kind of at least in Evo Psych, that's the explanation as to why
Women.
the social calibration in women, or their reliance on their sixth sense,
is higher.
or the energy vibes that they talk about. Women who say energy vibes, they don't necessarily understand the evolutionary psychology behind it. It's just like, oh, I have it.
Right.
Like I can read people. That's my magic talent.
It's about survival.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the origins of it.
Yeah.
It's there whether you can actually articulate it or not.
Yeah.
I always found it very interesting. Like if there's a problem, if there's a phenomenon, I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
I need to dig into it to be able to articulate and understand that, like the framework and the context. Once I understand that, I can articulate. I'm like, okay, now it makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
So, but it's a good point, because that does exist. And for men, because men generally don't have the, let's say, evolutionary requirements of having that sort of sixth sense of social calibration, ability to read people and energy and vibes, all of that. However, if a man does have that and develops that ability, it is definitely an advantage.
Yeah.
For example, when you're selecting both friends, business partners, romantic partners.
Yeah.
True. Having that idea of like somebody is probably a good person.
Yeah.
And you can trust on them.
Yeah.
If you make a mistake with that, you could ruin your business, your life, your health, all of it.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's I think everybody also might probably recognize there are moments in your life that there's no explanation, but you have some sort of a gut feeling, like somewhere deep down, you know something is something you should do, or you shouldn't do, or some person is somebody you should either get involved with or not.
Right.
It's a very kind of, it's not a loud voice. It's something kind of just knocking very silently. But if you don't listen to that, you might regret it later on.
Oh, definitely. No, I've made those mistakes, and I've also been able to look back and 10 out of 10, my gut was right. So yeah.
I have a small example that happened last week. I was coming from practice.
Yeah.
And I just drive the same route every single time. And so I was speeding after the lights turned green. And there was a car behind me. And something, for a fraction of a second, told me like, okay, chill a little bit on the gas.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but I was like, could that be a civilian cop? But then the thought just disappeared.
Yeah.
So I did what I usually do. I just go at the speed limit a little more.
Yeah.
And I kind of burn the lights when it's like dark green.
Yeah.
And I did that the whole way home. And at the last turn, suddenly the lights flash. So it was a civilian cop car.
No. Okay.
And they pulled me over and said, get on the back of the car.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Now I kind of know what's up. And I remembered immediately, like that small little voice said, okay, maybe now it's time to chill.
Yeah.
Just in case. Like, what are you going to lose? A few minutes on the way home?
Yeah.
And then what happened is the guys were like, okay, we saw you burn 2 pairs of traffic lights, and you were speeding on the way. And they were looking at me like, so you got something to say on your defense? I was like, can't deny that. But then I took the other route of saying, okay, I'm just coming from BJJ practice and I'm mentally drained, physically exhausted. So my mind is not there. Like, obviously my mind was there, but I'm like, okay, I'm not going to plead the fifth, but I'll just see how far it can take me to throw myself at the mercy of the court.
Yeah.
Because I can't deny none of them. There's 2 guys, they got video.
Right.
So I'm not going to give an attitude. Right. So I was kind of throwing myself at the mercy of the court and kind of looking for crumbs by being like, I don't know nothing. I was kind of messed up in the head because I'm just tired after training, etc. Started talking to them, just, nicely. Giving them the authority that they do have over me.
Exactly.
And trying to somewhat connect with them.
And say, oh, by the way, do you know Yuhani Takada?
Yeah. I asked them about whether they practice some sort of martial art. They were like, yeah, we used to. And these guys look like they've kind of seen some nasty stuff in the line of work. And then they started talking to me, etc. And it was all right. And they said, okay, we're going to give you, originally the ticket was like 400 euros.
Oh.
But then they looked at each other and said like, we might as well kind of let you slide on the speeding side of it, and we'll just take one burning of red lights. Um, and they gave me €100.
Nice.
So this was an example of, okay, number one, that little voice that sometimes is trying to tell you something. Just stop immediately and be like, okay, listen to it.
Right.
Just listen to it. Don't pretend like, it's nothing.
Right.
And the other thing is, like, when you get caught with your pants down, don't deny it.
Yeah.
It's like, be like, yeah, okay.
Did it. Yeah.
I'll throw myself at the mercy of the court.
Right.
How far it can take me, I don't know.
Right.
There was a case with my mom a couple of years ago. She basically ran a stop sign. And I was in the front seat and we were talking. And when she's talking, she's not really focusing on driving to the degree. And she drove home and there was a cop car behind us. Obviously, when we talk, it's kind of animated. So we're both like in it. And she doesn't notice stuff like that. And then the cop came to talk to her and said, like, did you notice that you ran the stop sign? She was like, what? And then I looked at my mom. I said, look, don't give any sort of attitude right now. Just be humble and accept it.
Right.
They saw you. Just don't talk back. Just chill. She was a bit like, huh? And then she started talking back. And then my dad came from the house and I told him, like, yeah, this is what happened. They were behind us the whole time and we were talking.
Right.
I told her not to talk back because now she's going to get a bigger fine. Because the cops have got that kind of leeway of either giving you the hard way or kind of cutting some slack.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have a lot of power over you, but that's their power right now.
Did your mom would she grow up doing a lot of business, or was she more of a?
No, it's I mean, she grew up in I would say, a pretty well-to-do family.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that you don't have to say anymore. I mean, it's obvious that she kind of has a certain stature. But the thing about you is what I just realized. What we were talking about before is you kind of learned. You learned what's called interpersonal skills. You learned emotional intelligence. You understand that in certain situations you have to adapt and be a certain way in order to kind of optimize the situation. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're going to hurt yourself if you don't. So all that thing has been probably, yes, you probably have a decent foundation, but then you learn that over the years.
I think that's certainly true to an extent.
Yeah.
I would also put a bit of emphasis on the fact that, and this is kind of, if you want to call it female privilege, is my mom I know several women of that sort of type, where the woman is, from a young age, she kind of knows her worth.
Yes.
She knows she's rather high up in the, let's say, of the desirable women that men look at and pursue.
Right.
So she understands, like, she's playing the field at a level X.
Right.
And then she's like, okay, I'll pick the best guy for me.
Yeah.
Right. And that guy, because she can play at a relatively high level, she can get a guy to commit to her.
Right.
And that's going to be her safety net until kingdom come.
Right.
Right. And my mom did that. So from her part, it was a smart move. And my dad basically got the girl that a lot of guys wanted, who came from somewhat of a privileged background.
Right.
But she secured her rest of her life. And that safety net, which was a good play from her, because I think they got married at 22. That was back in the day. What was that? That was in the late 60s. Yeah. So when you're a woman who is kind of maximize the potential at your young age, when you're attractive, fertile, all of this, and you locked in a dude that's going to be there for better or worse, in the true sense of the word, then there is an ability, not a necessity, but there's an ability to act a certain way that a woman who doesn't have a similar safety net in their life. So it could be that these women are very good people, and my mother, I believe she's a great person.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure she is.
But occasionally in her behavior, I notice a certain level of, and from an outsider's perspective, especially because I'm a man, I don't have a safety net like, okay, I have a woman that's going to rescue me if I mess things up.
Right.
Doesn't exist.
Right.
But sometimes in her behavior and women like her, they have a certain level of privilege or entitlement in their behavior. And as an outsider, you notice that you're like, hey, what the hell is that?
Right. They look
But
at
they
it
can
as,
afford it
right.
because there's no repercussions.
Right.
Life is not going to smack them in the face, be like, bro,
Right.
you need to know your place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's that safety net.
Yeah.
Now then, there's a lot of other questions that you could say. Well, okay, how is that balanced then? If there's, let's say, privilege, but I think that's kind of the additional part besides what you said about her. And I mean, she was working, but then my dad could easily support the family, so she didn't have to work.
Right.
So ever since she was like 45 years old, she hasn't been working.
Right.
And they're still doing great.
Yeah.
So that is a part of female privilege.
Yeah.
That exists if at a young age a woman is well aware of
Yeah.
the dynamics between men and women, and then they actually lock down the right type of guy.
Right.
But as a man, you know, just as well, unless you're a privileged kid who's got like a trust fund,
right,
men they can't afford that.
Right.
We have to build ourselves up, and if we act entitled or whatever, life is more likely to smack us in the face.
Sure.
True. Even literally.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, but that's why doing martial arts is good, because somebody's smacking you in the face, you're like, okay.
Right. Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we're on. But yeah. So I remember you mentioned something very interesting of kind of the randomness of life, that when it was 9/11, which is now what, 13 plus years, 23 years ago, that it is conceivable that had things gone slightly different, you would have been on that tower, one of the World Trade Center towers.
Yeah. Yeah. 700, was it? Well, Cantor Fitzgerald was the company that was on the 100 and can't remember if it was the 5th or 7th floor, and apparently it was either 698 or 7 something, somewhere close to around 700 plus employees died. And I worked for that company in Tokyo. One of my good friends worked for them. And I was kind of in between jobs. I was like 25. I just finished a year off traveling. I took a year off after working for about 4 years. I just went and traveled. I lived in France for 6 months.
Whereabouts in France?
In Paris. And
you speak French?
Yeah, oui. Je parle. No, I don't know. But I understand it a bit, and I speak it very little. But I do, you know, I can order shit and stuff like that. I know you do because you're Belgium or whatever. But yeah,
with a thick accent.
That's okay.
The French are like, ah, you hillbilly, redneck. Go back to Belgium.
But yeah, no, I remember it well because it's such an impactful event. It's interesting how when you look back in life, some things that really happen where it's totally unexpected, but moves not only you but a lot of people, and just it's really I'd have to say it's impactful, and it kind of leaves a mark, an indelible mark on your mind. You know, that moment. I could ask anybody, and 10 out of 10 people would tell me pretty much where they were the day that plane hit the World Trade Center. Everybody has a kind of an idea where they were. But yeah, so I worked for Cantor for some months, but somewhere deep down in me, again, I don't know if it was already a sixth sense premonition that one day if I keep up, I'm going to die in this company, or was it just more like it wasn't my road, it wasn't my path.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. I was just, you know, I was going to make a lot of money. My buddy was making $500,000 a year, and this is what he was like 26, 27. He's a couple of years older than me, and he's like, "Talk, man, you work for us, you're gonna easily make $500,000 starting." And yeah, the money was exciting, but it's like, fuck, man, I want to do some other stuff. I want to have my own company. I want to do my own shit. So yeah, I never went there, but I knew some of the guys there. There's one guy, never forget. We used to hang out with a lot of girls back in the day, partying. And, you know, Mr. GQ, his name is Joey Mayo, rest in peace. Good looking guy, you know, had everything, sportsman, just, you know, I remember like we were all going up to the cabin in Tokyo, and him, Joey, and my buddy Rob, and a few other guys. We all like had the girls over partying, and he had this really cute girl, and I was kind of into her, but he ended up like sleeping with her or whatever, which was fine. But anyway, long story short, he was working at Canada, and he passed. He had a wife and two kids, but I never knew this. But Joey's roommate in college was one of my close friends in high school. Yeah, so there's kind of a connection there. So you kind of think of it that yeah, I could have been there, it could have been me, and but it wasn't. So that was my it wasn't my time then. Um, but that was pretty impactful that time. What happened there in 9/11? Because I interviewed in the World Trade Center when I got that job. So I actually flew to New York, and I've been to the World Trade Center many times as a kid. And to think that that thing got crushed, or but then you see some pictures of how that thing blew up. I mean, we're not going to talk about it today, but
That's another kind of worms.
that is another can of worms. That's I don't know.
If nothing else,
Yeah,
you open that one up, you get demonetized, and you get banned and all that.
yeah. Sorry, I just got to check one thing real quick. Oh fuck, is this Maria calling? What the hell does she want? Maria from time. Oh, what is this? Are you bringing food? No. Sorry, I got a family of six right now. That luckily I don't have to attend to all, but they're all I've got to do a few things later. But yeah, so that was that. And I kept living in Tokyo, um, doing my thing. Got into real estate, um, and then I met Maria, my current wife right now, my only wife, in Japan. She was 20. She at the time I was 31, 30 when I met her. And she was there doing some modeling, um, and yeah, we hit it off. Definitely, the rest is history.
So you're kind of, it makes sense from the model that you had from your dad. Like he was already clearly an adult, he was established,
Yeah,
and then you knew like if it worked for dad, why not for me, right?
exactly.
So
And there's some things to be said. I think when two people, men and women, marry too young, there's a lot of challenges. Men need time to grow up, and in many instances, men never grow up. That's a fact. You just have to accept it. And you also have to accept the fact that men and women are different, biologically different, physiologically different,
that's such a toxic thing.
mentally. What?
That's such a toxically masculine thing to say.
I don't fucking care because I'm gonna say it. I don't give a fuck because this world we live in is
Are
so.
we not blank slates? We're completely equal in
No,
everything.
fuck that. No fucking way. No, no. And it's not. It's the funny thing is like they got to stop this bullshit about equality. There's no point. We're not going to be equal in everything, and we don't need to be. We have to celebrate our differences. Our differences is what makes us strong.
Yeah.
Our differences is what allows women to be who they are and men to be
Yeah.
who they are. And if we don't accept that, and that probably I've learned that because I'm different. And I realized that you have to embrace your difference and focus on the strengths of your difference. And for the girls and the woke and all those people shouting from the top, the rooftop saying, well, we got to have this equality and men have to be equal to women and blah. It's like, no, and and I've said this to my wife, and my wife's a bit of a feminist, but she knows where I stand. And scientifically too, they've done the research. That
Yeah.
the wire, the women's brains wired differently. They think 50 different things constantly. Like that. That's how their mind has been built. Men don't, and that again, biology. It comes. We haven't graduated. We're still like in. If you think about it, it's only been a few hundred years. We have all this like technology and shit. But go back 500 years, I mean, we were like a lot of hunter gatherers out there. We were foraging for food. We were going out there and hunting. That was our main source of survival. And women were in the house, doing their thing, protecting and making sure things are, okay in the house. And
Yeah, I mean that's the problem nowadays that people for some reason think that, you know, thousands of years of, let's say, the built-in hardware that we have and the software can just be pretended as though we're blank slates. It's all, external. Like we can just change because everything is
Right.
cultural, while a lot of times forgetting that 99.99% of people who've ever lived have lived in abject poverty. And they've had to work really hard to stay alive.
Right.
And before the Industrial Revolution, everything was done by muscle power,
Right.
of humans or animals. So that was hard work. And go work on the fields. Women couldn't do that.
Right.
They're not physically capable. That's why they stayed home, had kids, and took care of the house and the home, right? That was naturally their inclination and strength. And men went out there to fight and to toil.
They
and
adapted to that. Biologically,
Exactly.
They became that. If you look at animals, they adapt. They become what they do.
And then I think sometimes people might resort to, the hardcore, let's say, in this case, feminists said, well, I know women that are strong and can work in the field. It's like, okay, are we really talking about a high IQ conversation where you say, I know an exception to the rule, therefore I will try to take your rule out as the baby with the bathwater?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, there are exceptions. We understand there's a curve.
Yeah.
And at the very end, you've got examples and exceptions, but that doesn't change the fact that the vast majority of people are in the middle.
Correct. And those exceptions, usually if you check their, like, woman who can fucking power lift, testosterone levels up the roof, So it's like, she's more male than woman than men.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm not a misogynist by any. I love women. I adore women. I have high respect for my mother, but I think I'm smart enough to know that, we are different, and we need to really learn to respect and accept the differences and not try to like equalize stuff.
Like imagine if we look at men and women as a caricature, polar opposites. So there's polarity.
Right.
It's kind of like, yeah, exactly. Right. You've got the brightest of the day that is then contrasted by the darkest of the night, right?
Right.
Are you trying to say that we would be better off living in a constant dusk or dawn instead of having clearly a day and a night? Should we be like on the twilight zone rather than be either awake and then sleep 8 hours a night?
Right.
So this movement of trying to pretend that we're all equal and there's no differences, we're blank slate, it's all cultural and thus can be changed. I find that to be, it's like a
paradox.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a dog chasing its tail.
Yeah.
It's not really going to end anywhere.
No.
Not to mention that this is also studied widely since the 60s, where the cultural change started to become a wave because of hormonal birth control, and then obvious development of technology, throwing religion down the drain, all the morals. You've got the Woodstocks, all the free sex and drugs and rock and roll. They've been studying it continuously, the subjective levels of happiness of both men and women. For men, there's not really that great of a difference. But for women, it's been constantly going down. So the more freedom and ability to do whatever they please women have, on average, their subjective levels of happiness go down.
Right.
You might say, how is that possible?
Right.
Where does it come from? I really don't have an answer besides you're trying to kind of twist and turn. You try to get the cat to bark. And the cat is really struggling doing that.
Right.
So I would say kind of, what is the end goal? Imagine if the current day Western culture wars and whatever they're trying to push, that comes to a breaking point. It has also been studied that young men are twice as likely to think in terms of right wing than young women. So imagine if there's a point like not the Arab Spring, but the culture wars get to a point where things get violent. Who do you think is going to prevail? Like when most of fighting age young men think in terms of right wing, and you might have a bunch of anarchist, socialist, communist, woke folks who try to control speech, etc. When those collide, who do you think is going to come out victorious?
One on the right.
Obviously,
Right.
whenever you've got people in society that are unhappy,
Yeah.
the most dangerous demographic is young fighting age men.
Yeah.
Because they can actually physically create havoc
Yeah.
and actually use violence to pursue their goals.
Yeah.
So in a sense, I'm not really worried about where the world is going, because if push comes to shove, whoever the young fighting age males are supporting, they're going to prevail, because when everything else is on the table and the last resort is violence, they will win.
Right. Right.
So in that sense, people who are afraid of the decline of the West, are there legitimate fears for that? And let's say the average age of marriage and having kids and the fertility rates have been like all over the place. Is our demography in decline? Yes, for now. But could it be? I don't know. What do you think? Could it be that this is kind of like a bottleneck, whereby we have a natural selection of who's going to get through that bottleneck, and then things are going to turn for the better. Yeah. Now we're kind of heading downhill,
right?
And the kind of the belief that progress is a given,
right?
And regardless of what we do, progress will prevail,
right?
And freedom and liberal democracy is going to prevail. It's not really a given,
right?
When you look at globally for the last 30, 40 years, the amount of people that are living in free and liberal democratic countries has been going down. So does that say that our system is not as good as the alternative? Or does it say that we might have the best system, but we're just going the wrong direction?
Right.
Like our foundation is better than the rest, but we're heading towards the wrong direction right now.
Right.
I don't know. What is your take on that?
No, there's actually, I find some truth in that. And it's funny, and there's manipulation going on behind the scenes to offset the good that we're going to as well, because there's a lot of, kind of non-democratic, other types of views that are trying to push their agenda. And now with the advent of technology and other means, and now with AI, they find a way to get in and destabilize kind of the good platform that we've been able to build. So yeah, right now it's some. Yeah, so I do agree with you, and I do feel like, if we go to that bottleneck and come out good the other side, but there's going to be a bit more chaos, challenges, and probably hardship, and people thrown out now. And this is like soft media throwing out this idea of World War III. But the danger also is that you reap what you sow, and you also you start manifesting this idea and getting a gathering of people behind it. That if you start putting enough information out there, then it's almost like getting everybody, giving them the will that this is going to happen. Let's make it happen. Let's do this World War III, because that will cleanse a lot of things.
Somebody said, well, who was it again? Who said the tree of liberty needs to be cleansed by the blood of tyrants and patriots. It was one of I think that was the founding fathers who said that. Occasionally, the tree of liberty has to be washed or cleansed with the blood of tyrants and patriots.
Wow.
To kind of jump on that bandwagon, it seems to me that the push that they have right now, which is for, let's say, let's support the oppressed, let's have affirmative action for those who have been oppressed historically, let's have body positivity, etc. So I'm not sure when it comes to affirmative action that you have these programs whereby, let's say, the black population in the US 15%. So whoever gets admitted to Harvard or Ivy League schools, 15% have to be black. Otherwise it's racist, right? Or Hispanics represent 20% of the population. So you have to have 20%. But then what they have right now, they've had it for many years now. You've got Asian Americans who've thrown in a bunch of lawsuits because they are discriminated against
Mm-hmm.
because the SAT scores that they have to get
Mm-hmm.
as Asian Americans is way higher than a lot of other groups.
Right.
Now, would you call that racism or what is that actually? Because you're judging people from different ethnic groups through different standards.
Right.
And perhaps that is kind of a current day small thing, but I would say the overarching thing is, imagine you mentioned AI. AI is very quickly developing its
Mm-hmm.
abilities, and very soon we will be in a position where the people who do the most simple labor tasks
Mm-hmm.
and who've got the least amount of knowledge that they require in order to perform said tasks, those will be redundant.
Yes.
So machines will do it for them.
Right.
Now, on average, people who do low skilled labor are probably also relatively low in IQ, ability, ambition, all of that stuff.
Right.
So those people are the ones who will be redundant at first.
Right.
And when AI develops, the last people that will be useless
Mm-hmm.
are those who perform the most highly skilled and complex tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have affirmative action where you try to kind of be empathetic and bring up the oppressed people, and like, let's say there's 2/3 of the Americans, slightly less Europeans, who are obese.
Right.
Should we have affirmative action for the obese?
Right.
So in terms of how many people get into Congress, you have to have 2/3 of them obese.
Right.
Like, what's the end goal of those programs?
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, the more AI goes up there, the more the, let's say, if you want to call it deficient people,
Mm-hmm.
or those who are less capable of managing complex tasks,
Right.
those will be useless.
Right.
And then AI will one day say, well, we've got a few billion mouths to feed that are not providing any value. How about we deal with them in a very kind way? For example, let's speculate that they come up with a pandemic, and then they come up with a jab, and they start boosting people with the jab, and then suddenly there's more myocarditis, heart attacks, etc. And then you start to kind of get rid of them.
Or they just release some fucking gas in the air, which
Exactly.
doesn't affect the AI, but fucking kills everybody.
Exactly. I mean, there's a bunch of different options of how far that could go, but the problem is, the more AI and technology develops, the more the people who are not highly capable of managing complex tasks, they will be useless.
Right.
In terms of the economy.
Right.
Now, will we be wealthy enough to be able to support them through universal basic income? Perhaps. But then the overlords who are pulling the strings, they're like, well, why would we keep them alive?
Exactly.
Plus, if they don't have to do anything, they get UBI and they get some 3D goggles and they spend all their time in the virtual world.
Yeah.
Why not just get rid of them?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to fight back?
Well,
they sit on the couch all day and they're obese. Just get rid of them. So, in essence, what do we, or do we believe there's any chance we could stop the development of AI, of getting us into a very precarious situation where AI one day says, like Skynet, of like, maybe we don't need people anymore.
Right. They're expendable.
So
that's a $1 billion question right there.
And and I think to kind of go from what you said earlier is the equality side of it. There's a great distinction between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome.
Okay.
Because equality of opportunity is what we should always be aiming for, right? So regardless of your origin, your gender,
right.
So
I get it. We should
everybody gets the opportunity,
correct.
but opportunity of equality of opportunity, that's great, but equality of outcome, that's basically communism.
Right. So yeah,
it's like you might be the best, brain surgeon in this world, and then you got a waitress, and you both get paid the same.
Right.
What do you think the world's going to look like?
Right.
Take a look at any communist country. That's what you get.
Exactly.
Like, imagine if you're the best brain surgeon around, and you paid the same wages as a waitress.
Right.
How big is your motivation actually to do that great brain surgery on people who need it?
Exactly. No, I get it.
It's flat zero basically, and if you don't want to do that, The only way to make you do that is through application of violence and force and threats. And that's exactly what happens in every single communist country.
Yeah.
You try to equalize everything, but then people don't have ambition anymore, and they do their task with their left hand and one-eyed blind. And then you say, well, you should do a better job. Then you need to put a gun to their heads and they, do that surgery.
Right.
So how is that going to work out in the long term? When your system doesn't work unless you're forcing people to do things A, B, and C. And I guess especially those on the younger generation who support socialism and think capitalism is the root of all evil, they probably haven't read a bunch of history books.
No, definitely.
Or they think everything was exactly the same as it was now as like before the year 2000.
Exactly.
Or before Instagram and the internet.
Yeah.
But that's what I find quite interesting nowadays.
Right.
Especially now that we live in a country that it wasn't more than a couple of generations ago when you had a communist country trying to invade the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both of my grandfathers fought the Stalin's Red Army in the war.
Okay.
So there's a sense, at least in the older generation here, whereby the perception is that if you have the good and the evil, the evil is the communists.
Yeah.
Right? Because they try to get their kind of targets and goals done through violence.
Right.
Because they don't really have any other means.
Right.
Like, what was the soft power of a communist Soviet Union?
No.
Nothing.
It didn't exist, yeah.
What is the soft power of the new czar in Moscow right now? He has no soft power.
No.
The only thing he's got left is running his mouth about nukes.
Yeah.
And then fighting a conventional war that he's embarrassingly not even winning.
Right.
Like, imagine for whatever reason there was a war. Let's say the Americans started a war against Mexico, and they pushed through 100 miles into Mexico, and then it's trench warfare for a couple of years. Do you think that would be embarrassing for the U.S. military?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Teeny tiny bit.
Yeah.
So, I'm just saying.
Exactly.
So, but yeah.
Can we take a 2-minute break?
Sure.
All right. Hold on, I just gotta